2,190 miles. Georgia to Maine. Most people who walk the Appalachian Trail are counting miles, not looking sideways. But the footpath runs across some of the oldest ground on this continent. And it crosses things the guidebooks give one line to. A mountain people were told never to climb. A forest of dead trees standing at the highest point of the whole trail. A mile of boulders with ice inside it in July. 6 of them. South to north, the way you'd walk it. Some have answers. A couple genuinely don't. First, though, it's worth knowing what this path actually is. Because the Appalachian Trail was not somebody's idea for a nice long walk. In October of 1921, a forester named Benton Mackay published a piece in the Journal of the American Institute of Architects. The title was, An Appalachian Trail, a Project in Regional Planning. Read that title again. Regional planning. What Mackay actually proposed was a chain of work camps, farm and study communities, and shelters strung along the spine of these mountains, a working answer to industrial city life. The footpath was the thread meant to connect it all. The camps never happened. The thread did. The man who actually got it built was Myron Avery, a lawyer who chaired the Appalachian Trail Conference from 1931 until he died in 1952. His method was unglamorous and it worked: a club for every section, settle the route, clear and mark and maintain it, publish accurate maps. The trail was fully connected from Georgia to Maine in 1937. Avery walked the whole thing himself, in sections, as he built it. He was the first person to cover the entire trail. 11 years later, a Pennsylvania man named Earl Schaefer walked it in one continuous push, April to August of 1948, and reported the first through hike. The conference's editor put him through a real grilling on places, people, photographs, trail conditions. Their own position on it is refreshingly blunt. His account is accepted as the first reported through hike, and the Conservancy neither investigates nor endorses such reports. Schaefer walked it twice more. The last time was 1998. He was 79. Today the Conservancy puts the trail at 2,197.9 miles, and updates that number every year, because sections keep getting relocated and rerouted. The trail is not a fixed object. It moves. In the 2025 season, 2,187 people registered to start northbound. 550 reported finishing. That's about 1 in 4. Which is the honest frame for everything that follows. Most people who set out to see this whole thing don't get to. 31 miles in from Springer Mountain, still in Georgia, still early enough that your feet haven't forgiven you yet, the trail climbs to 4,458 feet. That's the highest point the Appalachian Trail reaches in the state of Georgia. At the top there's a 2-room stone cabin. The Civilian Conservation Corps built it in 1934, young men, government work, hand-cut rock. It went on the National Register of Historic Places in January of 2013. You can still walk inside it. Now the name. Blood Mountain. The gap below it is called Slaughter Gap. Those are not accidents of translation. The traditional account, marked on the mountain itself, is a battle between Cherokee and Creek fought in that gap, fought so hard that the story says blood ran down the slopes and gave both places their names. Label that what it is, traditional history, carried on a marker, not an excavation report. Here's the part that stays with me. In Cherokee tradition, this mountain was a home of the Nunahai. The name translates roughly to the people who live anywhere. They were understood as immortal spirit people who lived inside the mountains. And their reputation was not for haunting anybody. It was for taking in travelers who got lost, feeding them, and putting them back on their road. Think about what that means. Somebody looked at the most dangerous high ground in the region, the place where you die of exposure if you misjudge the weather, and built a story that says, if you get lost up here, the mountain is on your side. 2 miles below the summit the trail drops to Neal Gap and does something it does nowhere else in 2,000 miles. It goes through a building. The Wallacea Center is the only man-made structure the Appalachian Trail physically passes through. You walk in one side of the breezeway and out the other, and you're still on the trail. Wallacea. It's a Cherokee word. The mountain kept its old name in the doorway of the only building the trail lets you walk through. 200 miles on, in the Smokies, the trail reaches its ceiling. 6,643 feet. The highest point on the entire Appalachian Trail, and the third highest peak anywhere east of the Mississippi. For most of the last century the maps called it Clingman's Dome. That name was attached in 1859, after Thomas Clingman, a senator, and later a Confederate general. In 2022, two members of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, Lavita Hill and Mary Crow, started a push to change it back. In September of 2024 the U.S. Board on Geographic Names voted to restore the mountain's Cherokee name, Kawohe. It means mulberry place. It is what the people who have held this mountain sacred for thousands of years already called it. And then there's what's actually standing up there. The summit is ringed by Fraser fir, a tree that in the United States grows wild only on a handful of southern Appalachian summits. In 1957 an insect turned up in the Smokies that had no business being here, the balsam woolly adelgid, an import. Fraser fir had no defense against it. It killed 90 to 99% of the region's mature firs. And it doesn't kill the way you'd assume. The adelgid is tiny. It settles into the fissures in the bark and feeds, and its saliva carries a toxin that wrecks the wood's ability to move water. The tree doesn't get eaten. It gets cut off from its own water supply, standing up, and dies of thirst in the middle of a rainforest. So the highest point on the Appalachian Trail is surrounded by thousands of standing dead trees. Silver gray, stripped, upright. Hikers call it the ghost forest, and the name does the work. One more thing, and it's the good kind. A more recent count found the number of adult Fraser firs on that mountain tripled between the 1980s and 2020. The ghost forest is standing over its own replacement. Slowly. Nobody engineered that. It just refused. North again, to the Tennessee-North Carolina line, and something the trail does that scientists have argued about for 100 years without settling it. The Appalachian Trail runs straight across the tops of Round Bald, Jane Bald, and Grassy Ridge Bald. Up there, in the middle of an unbroken eastern forest, the mountaintops are grass. No trees. Not a clearing, not a burned scar. Open meadow, running for miles. This is the longest continuous stretch of grassy balds in the southeastern United States. The obvious answer is elevation. It isn't. Neighboring peaks at exactly the same height are covered in spruce and fir. Same latitude, same weather, same rock underneath. One is forest. One is lawn. There are three real hypotheses in the literature, and the Forest Service lays them out side by side. 1. The soil. Shallow, rocky, poor at holding water, trees simply can't get established, and never could. 2. People. That the balds are recent, opened by native land management or by settler livestock, and are artifacts rather than ancient features. 3. And this is the one that stops you. The climate herbivore hypothesis. That these openings date to the end of the last ice age, and were held open afterward by the animals that were still here to graze them. Mammoths. Mastodons. Ground sloths. Giant bison. That hypothesis has been argued in peer-reviewed literature, most recently in biological reviews. If that one is right, then a bald is not a meadow. It's a leftover. A piece of ground still open because something enormous used to eat there, and the forest has been slowly taking it back ever since the eating stopped. The grazing theory took a real hit early. In 1931 a botanist named Stanley Kane looked at the soil on Gregory Bald, a comparable southern bald, and found a mature grassland soil profile. 2 developed. Soil like that doesn't build in a century and a half of cows. Something had that ground open long before anybody arrived with livestock. And in the 1930s a Tennessee researcher, D.M. Brown, was already documenting something else: the forest edge was moving. The balds are shrinking. Whatever kept them open has stopped. So you can stand on Round Bald right now, on a maintained federal footpath, in a view 1,000,000 people have photographed, and be looking at an open scientific question. Nobody knows why you can see. A few miles on, the trail crosses a gap at 4,640 feet. There's a sign. Most hikers read it, nod, and keep walking. What it says is that you are standing on the Overmountain Victory National Historic Trail. 330 miles of it, running through Virginia, Tennessee, North Carolina and South Carolina. It's administered by the National Park Service, and it retraces a march. In the autumn of 1780, backcountry militia, men from the far side of these mountains, which is where the name comes from, walked this ground on their way to Kings Mountain. That campaign is one of the turns the Revolutionary War actually pivoted on. On the way, in heavy rain, they sheltered under an overhang called Shelving Rock, near what's now Roan Mountain State Park on the state line. It's still there. You can go look at the rock that kept the powder dry. That's the thing about this stretch. There's no mystery here at all. It's documented, marked, federally administered history. It's just invisible. Thousands of people a year cross that gap and never register that the path they're on was a war road first. 1,800 miles north, in western Maine, the trail does something almost cruel. Mahoosuc Notch is a gorge about a mile long between two mountains, and the floor of it is not a floor. It's boulders. Some of them the size of small houses, dropped in on top of each other. It's widely called the single hardest mile of the entire Appalachian Trail, and it earns that the honest way. Some hikers take 3 hours to cross it. You don't hike it so much as solve it. Over, under, through. People take their packs off and push them ahead through gaps they can't fit into wearing them. And then, in the middle of a Maine summer, you put your hand into a gap between two rocks and the air coming out of it is cold. Not shaded cold. Ice. There is ice down in those caverns in July. That one has an answer, and the answer is good. The boulder pile is deep and porous. Cold air is heavier than warm air, so winter cold sinks into the bottom of it and stays, insulated by rock all summer. No magic. Just geometry that happens to build a natural icebox in the middle of a temperate forest, on a footpath, at head height. 2,190 miles. And then Katahdin. The tallest mountain in Maine, and the northern end of the Appalachian Trail. The name is Penobscot, and it means the greatest mountain. It's held sacred by the Penobscot, Passamaquoddy, Maliseet and Micmac nations. Now, the tradition. And this is legend, told as legend. The Penobscot warned against climbing to the summit. The reason given was Pomola, a spirit described with the head and wings of a bird and the body of a man, with enormous talons. Master of cold, of wind, of storms. The top of the mountain was his, and people who went too high were said not to come back. One version of the story is gentler than the reputation. A hunter caught in a storm on the mountain makes an offering to Pomola, and instead of being killed he's spared, and taken inside the mountain for a time. The mountain almost didn't survive the 20th century intact. In 1931 the governor of Maine, Percival Baxter, bought nearly 6,000 acres of it with his own money and handed it to the state, with a condition attached in writing. It was to stay forever wild. So here's where the trail ends. On a mountain that indigenous tradition said you should not climb, protected by a governor who spent his own fortune to keep anyone from developing it, and summit every year now by thousands of people who spent 5 months walking there to do it. 6 places. 2 of them are settled science. 2 are documented history hiding in plain sight. 1 is a real open question that 100 years of botanists have not closed. And 1 is a warning that's older than the trail, older than the state, older than the country the trail runs through. The Appalachians are among the oldest mountains on Earth. People have been reading them, naming them, and warning each other about them for a very long time. The white blazes are the newest thing out there by a wide margin. So which one's near you? And if you've walked any of these, the Balds, the Notch, the Ghost Forest, tell us what it actually felt like standing there. We only get the pictures. The oldest mountains on Earth, and a footpath that crosses everything anyone ever left on them. Tell us about the one near you.